This is LJ,
PJ.
Fernanda, and this is our Youth Participatory Action Research Project for our high school ethnic literature final. We are addressing the topic in which we believe our high school, Culver City High School, can improve on and consequently help the LGBTQIA+ community. The objective of this project is to have an understanding that in order to make change in our community, we have to actively be looking for ways to improve and participate in things like school events, activities, fundraisers, and etc.
To define the problem, the lack of LGBTQ+ sex education in Culver City High School affects students of all orientations. This project will advocate for the LGBTQ+ community by providing all-inclusive sex education, thus extinguishing the lack of understanding of their identity, community, and experiences. Its absence can be damaging due to their having been made invisible to society for being different and not fitting into the dominant narrative.
There needs to be an understanding in the consequences due to lack of knowledge, because teenagers are then left to their own devices. This means they turn to the internet, and that leads to consuming false information and portray sex in an unhealthy way. This also leads to myths about the LGBTQI+ community. For our project, we want to spread awareness about this subject in order to no longer keep them in the dark.
Historically, the LGBTQ+ community has been excluded in classrooms and education, even though they have always been there throughout the history. From the 1970s to today, around 150 years, social movements and organizations have tried to bring awareness to the queer community. Even at the beginning, white male activists started to fight against homophobia, but did not address race, class, identity, and excluded women. Homosexuality was seen as foreign, savage, and a medical issue that needed to be treated. Unfortunately, today we are still dealing with communities who have this point of view that one's lifestyle that harms no one directly affects their lives and their families.
Our research shows that less understanding in sex education leads to shame in the topics of gender and sexual identity, and higher risk of STIs, and less use of contraceptives. So we need to support our youth in being more prepared in something that is completely normal.
In our research, we found that teachers and textbooks don't really address the identities and experiences of students, and that can be potentially damaging than in lack of regular sex education. We need more inclusive programs because they help the youth understand gender identity and sexual orientation with age-appropriate and medically accurate information, incorporate positive examples of LGBTQ individuals, romantic relationships, and families, emphasis on the need for protection during sex for people of all identities, and dispel common myths and stereotypes about behavior and identity. Surveys like the National School Climate Survey examine the school policies and practices that may contribute to negative experiences for LGBTQ students and make them feel as if they are not valued by their school communities. Things like the LGBTQ students in schools with LGBTQ inclusive curriculum were less likely to hear gay used in a negative way often or frequently, and 54% compared to 78.5% of other students were less likely to hear homophobic remarks such as fag or dyke often or frequently. 46.3% versus 68.7% were less likely to hear negative remarks about gender expression often or frequently, and 43.5% versus 59.2% were less likely to feel unsafe because of their sexual orientation.
Dr. Tano has been the staff advisor of the Tolerance Club for 8 years after he took it over from Judy Saunders, a chemistry professor at CCHS who first created the Tolerance Club in the 90s. He participates in Proud Parents, a support group for parents who are a part of, or whose family members are a part of the LGBTQ+ community. When asked how CCHS could be more inclusive towards LGBTQ+ students on campus, he suggested that, quote, "We have to show that through school policies that the administrators would implement, and then we'd have to show it through examples from the teachers," end quote. Dr. Tano also states that there are two main concerns received from students regarding the treatment for the LGBTQ+ community on campus. Quote, "One, they're never taught in school about inclusive sex ed, and the other thing is that a lot of students feel like the teachers and administrators don't really enforce or acknowledge issues around LGBTQ+ student populations." End quote. Dr. Tana believes that educating and exposing our students will change their behavior for the better. He says, quote, "They need to learn, and I think that is one of the biggest ways we're going to stop the microaggressions that a lot of times happen in our school," end quote.
Miss Cassidy, formerly known as Miss Mansour, is a science teacher at Culver City High School, and they teach honors biology, regulars biology, and health. This is their 8th year here and unfortunately their last. She talked about how things are always changing when it comes to the LGBTQ plus material. There should be professional development on this topic to help them better understand the new terminology that always is coming out. She also encourages more open conversations about it in order to create less stigma. She also talks about contraceptives and how important it is to teach about it.
What is your opinion on adding dental dams to the health center?
Dental dams are
Female condoms.
yeah. I was just teaching about it today. So I teach about it today because there are lots of reasons as to why you want to use them. I teach all forms of contraceptives, from IUDs to the pill to the patch to the shot to using diaphragms and spermicides, which aren't even really used anymore, right? So yes, we talk about female condoms. They're not as widely used. I think it would be helpful to have some of them up in the nurse's office as well. Because again, depending on your sexual preference, this can actually help with an individual who may be having all sorts of sexual activity, whether it's male to female or female to female.
What do you think of students turning to the internet regarding sex education due to not being taught about it properly?
Oh, it's terrible, right? Because students come in and they're shocked that females have pubic hair, right? Why? Why? Because their sole reasoning of sex education is porn. Okay? It's terrible. You Google something on Google and you're gonna figure out that you have cancer and you have prostate cancer and you don't even have a prostate, right? So it's terrible. Why? Because Google provides you with tons of information, but how do we actually relay that information to what you need is what my job is, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, and I come from a really conservative household. To this day, my parents, we don't talk about this. And I went to a Catholic school, and my sex education was, you touch someone, you get pregnant, and you die. Terrible, right? So if someone has a parent like that, and not saying that that's a wrong approach because they might not have been taught any different, but how are they going to learn about these things, right?
Do you think that all-inclusive sex education will benefit to all students? Why or why not?
Yes, right? Why do I teach people that consider themselves biological males about the female reproductive system? Because you need to know, right? We are considered humans. Humans have lots of different facets for our sexuality, our sexual orientation, our sexual preferences. And I think not talking about those things is a disservice because it means that now this is a taboo topic and now we need to be afraid of it, which I think is ludicrous.
Yeah.
So,
it's part of life.
Yeah.
We talked to the health center and teachers at Culver City High School asking what they think of adding dental dams to the health center. All of them unanimously approved of the adding of the dental dams. Currently, we're in correspondence with the health center and waiting for a response from the head, or rather the person who orders the condoms.